Hey guys, this is Chen with Friday's Fresh Market. Today we want to talk about bulbs because fall is coming and it's not a second best time for planting bulbs during the fall time. So I think that would be really good for just share some information about the bulbs. Some of those you probably are familiar with, and but there are some other details and information I think would be really beneficial to all you guys. So when it comes to fall bulbs, we're talking about many different kind of varieties. So I have few just laid out over here. Now, your most popular ones is gonna be tulips. And at our garden center, we have some really nice tulip bulbs, like a mixture like this, or single colored ones like these. Those are actually my favorite. Those are the straight red ones. They're so pretty. I just planted some of these the other day. And the manufacturer, which is this Netherlands bulb company, they do a really great job of pre-mix some of the colors and according to people's preference. Because some people might really like a red series of the colors, or some people might like something like this. This is a really nice mixture of your dark maroon and yellowed and some lavender colored series. So when a manufacturer actually do these kind of the pre-mixing job, and make our consumers' life a lot easier for planting them, because if you plant all of that next spring, you're gonna have a beautiful field of a mixture of these colors. So tulips will be definitely one of the most popular bulb variety. And then you have your hyacinth like these. A lot of people are very familiar with hyacinths. They come with many different colors, but my favorite actually is these kind of deep blue ones. They're so pretty. So each bag of the bulbs and has a number of the bulbs inside. So some are 6, some are 8, some, when you have a bigger bags like this, you can have up to 20 or 25 bulbs in the bag. When it comes to hyacinths, and one really interesting varieties that I want to make sure I mention is the grape hyacinth. So they look very different than your ordinary hyacinth. They actually are these kinds. So you might have seen those in people's yard, and they're really tiny, like a little upside down clustered of grapes. So that's why they are called grape hyacinths. Sometimes and they just carried by the wind. The seeds are just carried by the wind, and they just pop up as wildflowers. But you definitely can plant them. So their bulbs are fairly small. So those are grape hyacinths, very, very loved one kind of the bulbs. And then you have your crocus. Your crocus most typically will be looking like this. Now those are one of the earliest blooming bulbs in the springtime, just like hyacinths, and they bloom anytime from as early as March, April, and they are the first ones that poking out of the ground. So your crocus typically looks like this. However, there is a really popular and beautiful, beautiful special kind of the crocus. It's your snow coat crocus. I don't know if you have seen these kinds, but they're the white ones. So very unusual. I haven't seen those very much around in the neighborhood, but mostly your crocus is gonna be like this. Purple, yellow, white ones are really common, but if you can get hold of those snow crocus, I would say definitely trying to get some and plant that in your yard this fall. Other than that, we have narcissus. So narcissus, a lot of people very familiar with. Mostly they are all yellow toned. So you have your really baby yellow colored, bright yellow. Sometimes they are straight yellow like these. Sometimes they are straight yellow like these, or sometimes then they have a orange and a red eye in it. The petals can be anywhere from light yellow to white. And here is a very exotic and a beautiful narcissus. It's a large cupped narcissus, and it's very different, unique looking. So it has the white petals, and then you have this beautiful bright orange eye in the middle. So this one is also available at our garden center. Many options, just so many different varieties comes to bulbs. And personally, I like them all. Another really cute narcissus. I want to make sure I mention this guy. This guy is uh, look like this. Can you see? So it has this beautiful five-petaled, one, two, three, four, five, six-petaled flowers, and in the middle you have a really cute little yellow eye, but the yellow has a ring of the red outside of this. So narcissus mostly yellow, but if you're lucky, you can definitely find some of the exotic versions at your garden center. So when you come across these, I would recommend to definitely snatch them because they're gonna make a really bold statement in your yard for the upcoming years. Next is our, oh, I want to make sure that I mention a very unique kind of the bulb that is, it's called allium. So if you haven't seen these, really make sure that you know this is a very unique type of the bulbs that it comes up as a single stalk, but it got a huge purple ball, like really large, like perfect sphere shaped purple ball. And sometimes you might see them around, but not very often. Those are called alliums. They're in the onion family. At our garden center, at the front, you might see springtime. We have those alliums planted from the past year. So every spring, they come up and they have this long stalk, and then they have a huge ball, and it's just such an unusual looking. So if you plant this fall, next spring, you will be able to get those beautiful purple ball at your yard that is going to catch everybody's attention. So I want to make sure that I mention this alliums because it's not something that you see every day, and definitely really special. So those are some of the most common bulbs that people see, and they are available right now at the garden center store. So when it comes to fall bulbs, what means fall bulbs? Those bulbs right now are considered fall planting bulbs. What they are is they're in these kind of the shape, like in these bulb shape, and you plant them during the fall time, and the cutoff time for planting fall bulbs is before hard frost. So when you're thinking about a hard frost, probably in our region, we're in Midwest in zone 5, so somewhere around the end of October. Year by year, it might be different. Sometimes it might be early November, but before hard frost, these fall planting bulbs, they must go into the ground, and they have to. And if you miss that window of time, you miss the best opportunities and to give them the best environment for them to be planted and come up and bloom beautifully next spring. So anytime from right now until the hard frost, that you have the time to put those in the ground. So next, I want to talk about and say, when you plant bulbs, how you plant. The best way is to plant them in the ground outside, because the bulbs are perennials. They are probably one of the easiest perennials to take care of. Not only because they come back every year. That's basically the concept of being perennials, is every year they come back automatically. You don't have to necessarily replant them unless some got damaged and just permanently they're dead. You have to replace them. But technically, all the bulbs are really hardy, and once you plant them for the first year, the second and upcoming years, they just come back automatically. You don't have to worry about them. and they present such a beautiful combination of the colors, the shapes, and they go so well being planted together. So not only like other kind of the perennial shrubs, um, they just have this really unique, just like when you plant them all together, you have this area of different bulbs, and they can all bloom at a different time. Some are early bloomers like your crocus and your hyacinth, and some are late bloomers. Your tulips will be a little bit later, and some other bulbs, and they would all come just one after another. So you always have a really vibrant color of those flowers in your yard, and you basically don't have to do anything, and you just kind of let them be, right? But after they bloom, a lot of people wondering that what they should do with those. Now, after your hyacinth done blooming or your tulips done blooming, you don't have to cut the leaves, or you don't have necessarily to just chop it off. And all you do is the flowers are dead, you just let the leaves to naturally just die down. The reason being is even if the flower is spent, the most beautiful part of the flower probably after few weeks and it's gone, the leaves, you know, the green leaves are still being there, and it's still receiving the beautiful sunlight, it's still receiving the water that you put it into the ground, and it's still processing that photosynthesis. Now the photosynthesis is gonna generate energy and generate beneficial enzymes and sugars within the bulb, within the plant. And the plant is gonna send those energy down into the bulb and into the roots. So even if the flower above the soil, the flower is done with, don't worry about hurry up cutting off the leaves. Leave the leaves there and to continue to generate energy and send it down into the soil so the bulbs can grow bigger and the roots can, establish better. And until after, after being weeks and months, and then the leaves naturally die down, then you can clean it up, you can cut it off, or however, because the nature already killed leaves, and it's not manually done by you or by anybody. So just let the leaves naturally die down once the flower is gone. A lot of bulbs, you don't have to dig them up, and they can just sleep in the soil and go dormant during the winter time. They're actually best protected in the soil over the winter. But cannas, maybe a couple of bulbs that you do need to dig them up. They are not that hardy to stay outside over the winter. Cannas is definitely one kind. You dig the cannas bulbs after season and wrap them in the newspapers and preserve them at a well ventilated and cool dark place like your garage or your basement. Your amaryllis, you would want to dig them out if you ever plant amaryllis in the ground during the season outside. But your tulips, your crocus, your hyacinths, and your alliums, you don't need to dig them. They're hardy enough to just survive outside, and that's another really beneficial way of saving the work. So when you do plant bulbs outside in the ground, you can use any tool. You can use any tool you have at home. Basically, you just want to dig a hole. Dig a hole, you drop the bulbs in, and then you cover it up with soil. However, if you ever want to find the best tool, I'm talking about the best tool of planting bulbs, I highly recommend a bulb planter. So this guy is a hand tool for planting bulbs, and you can see it's really simple. It's basically just a metal piece that has cut out, kind of like a cut out rigid shape of the bottom, and on top you have this handle. So when you plant, you push this down into the soil, and it depends on how deep you want to plant your bulbs, and there's a really good instruction I will show you here in a minute. But push down into the soil, twist it, and this way that you got the soil loose, and then you pull it out. As you pull it out, a chunk of the dirt, a chunk of the soil from your ground will be unplugged from from the ground, and then it creates a perfect shape of this size of the hole in your ground. And then you just drop your bulbs, however many. You can plant one if it's a large bulb like an heirloom. A lot of times heirloom bulbs is this size. They're large ones. You just need to drop one in a hole. However, if you plant smaller bulbs like your crocus, they're really small, right? So when you plant a crocus, you want to drop like a few in the hole. So when they come up, they have this beautiful bush and clustered looking. It's not going to be single ones, really bald single ones. You want them to look like a whole bunch like these. So you use your bulb planter if you ever get a chance to get one of these from the garden center or from the store, and then you dig your hole, however many hole that you want to dig, and create your pattern in your yard, and then you drop the bulbs and in the hole, and then you cover them up with this dirt plug that you just removed from the ground. You can just take this plug, put it back into the hole. It's just that simple. And then you cover it up with soil. And in the wintertime, if you want to protect them further, you can do a layer of the mulch and mulch them really well and insulate the, the ground from the outside weather. And that would just be it. When it comes to the depth of certain kind of bulbs, how deep you should plant them or how deep you should dig this with, on the back, well, I don't know about other company, but with this company, Netherlands Bulb Company, and I think they do a fantastic job, because not only they provide the most beautiful looking bulbs on the market, they also provide so much information that is educational and informational. So on each package of this piece of cardboard flap or whatever you call it, on the back, you will see they give you an instruction of each different kinds of the bulbs and how deep they should be planted. And here is your soil level. This line is your soil level, okay? So different kinds of the bulbs, and you basically can see how tall they get compared to each other and how deep the bulbs actually can be planted underneath of the soil. Generally, if you go by the general rule of thumb, is the larger the bulbs, generally deeper they should be planted. The smaller the bulbs, they can go a little bit shallower into the soil when you plant them. So when you look at the heirloom, which is on the very end of this chart, this is your heirloom. So your heirloom looks like it's going to be the tallest once it comes up, and it needs to be planted a lot deeper than your crocus, right? So don't worry about if you're not sure some of those details and remembering all those numbers, because it's going to help you. The package and all the information on the back is going to help you to plant. So then you just go by, how deep you can go, and just plant with a handy tool like this. We also have a kind of like a shovel version of this bulb planter. Basically, the top look like a long shovel, and I will have a picture over here. The top look like a long shovel, and it has a long, long part in the middle, but at the bottom just like this. And with that kind, you can actually step on the side of that shovel, and then you can step on it to help you to get this easily into the soil when you plant. This is a handheld tool, but it's also cheaper than that shovel version of this bulb planter. So that is when you plant bulbs outside in the soil. Now, I want to talk about growing bulbs inside, because you can grow bulbs inside. Most popular ones, and people probably have seen with hyacinths, right? So especially during the winter time or Christmas time, you would see that hyacinth bulbs are being kind of planted in a glass, like hourglass shaped glass vase. and then the part of the neck is narrow, and the top you have a kind of an opening and for dropping the bulbs, and underneath you have also kind of a little bit larger shaped of holding water. So that is a typical hyacinth vase. You can grow hyacinth in the water. They don't necessarily need to be planted in the soil, even indoors. So that's a really easy way if you want to induce and trigger the hyacinth blooming during that Christmas time, during the holiday time indoors. Besides that, you also can grow many other kind of the bulbs inside. Your amaryllis, your daffodils, and your paper whites, you can all grow them inside in a actually pan, in actually bulb pan. So when you grow these bulbs inside, there is a industrial technical term for growing bulbs inside. It's called forcing. Because the bulbs are not planted in the nature, so they don't get all these like hard frost, and then the weather drops, and then spring comes, the weather warms up. They don't get that natural flow of the weather and the temperature. So when you grow them inside the house, you have to mimic the nature just like outside for them, because this is the beauty of our nature and of our plants, and they just have this generic kind of like programmed genes with them that they can sense the temperature. They know what to do when they sense the outside of temperature changes, and that triggers internal changes within the bulb itself, and they do certain things. So when you do grow bulbs inside in a container with soil, mimicking the nature, which means all bulbs, all fall planting bulbs, they have to be planted before hard frost, and then they go through this long period. We're talking about 6 to 8 weeks of the just cold weather, right? So you're thinking about anywhere from December to February, and during that period of time, that's your coldest weather, and that really is must must be necessary. It's a must for the bulbs to trigger them to grow roots during that period of time and help to stimulate them to bloom during the springtime. So when you grow them inside, how to mimic the weather, how to mimic the temperature is very important. Now, first of all, you want to choose a container that is about 6 inch diameter, and a terracotta is always my favorite. Don't go with a planter that is really, really deep, because the deeper the planter, the more soil you're gonna use. And every time when you water, that much soil is gonna hold on to the water and it's gonna sit there. It's not really great for the bulbs. Bulbs like well drainage, and they like really well drained soil. So make sure you go with a planter that is shallow. This one is about on the verge of how deep it should be. It can go even a little bit shallower. But 6 inch pan or planter that has a drainage hole at the bottom. So you can use some gravels at the bottom, or use some river pebbles, river rocks, and just go 1 inch at the bottom over here to lay it with gravel to provide even better drainage. And then you fill this pot with soil, and after you fill up with soil, then you can plant your bulbs. When you plant your bulbs, you want to plant your, for example, using hyacinth as an example, or tulips. So when you plant your bulbs, for example, you see the bulbs look like that, and it has a pointing tip on the top, and it has a flatter side at the bottom. It almost looks like it has a belly button right at the bottom. So when you plant, you want to plant the tip up and the belly button down into the soil. But you don't bury this bulb completely in the soil. You plant it so the tip, just a little bit of tip, is poking out of the soil level. So the bottom is at the base. Your soil should be around here. So your tip is poking out just a little bit. So after you planted this in the pan, now keep this first to start with in a cold and a dark place Why in a cold and dark place? Again, this is mimicking the nature. We're creating this kind of a winter-like, that 6 to 8 weeks of the winter-like cold weather. So you want to keep it in a cold place, just like the bulb is feeling, oh, it's wintertime. I'm just gonna preserve my energy. I'm gonna trying to settle in this soil and start to grow my roots in this dark place. Why dark? Because um, it's kind of mimicking the bulbs as if it was planted outside in the ground under the soil. So it's all dark, right? Even if you plant it with the tip a little bit up, but you want to keep this whole thing in a cold and a dark place. You know what's the perfect environment for places like that? Is your refrigerator. So find a place, find a corner of your fridge. You can wrap this up or somehow just kind of wrap it in the newspaper, keep it clean, and put this in a corner of your fridge. Or if you have an extra fridge, then you can definitely put that inside of the fridge. When you shut a fridge door, we know that the light doesn't turn on. It only turns on when you open. So when you shut a fridge door, your refrigerator is the most ideal place for bulbs to go through this kind of mimicking nature period for cold and dark. So you put this in the fridge for about 6 to 8 weeks, and then after that period, you take it out, you put this at a warm and a sunny spot inside of your house, okay? And again, this is kind of like to tricking the bulbs thinking, oh, spring is coming. From the cold 20-30 degree weathers like your winter, and then it comes out of that period and it goes into a sunny and a warm place. So the bulb is kind of thinking, it's spring, okay? I need to start growing my leaves. I need to start sprouting. I need to start just growing, poking out of the soil. So this is for indoor forcing bulbs. If you have never grown bulbs indoors, then it's definitely a really good way to trying to learn. But make sure you give the bulbs a cold period and a dark period before you start kind of putting it into a nice sunny warm spot. So next that I want to talk about, if you plant your bulbs outside, and I've heard some customer told me that animals dig into their ground and they dig up all the bulbs and the tulips to be like something really susceptible to that. And I get it, sometimes that if we have a really harsh winter and animals and they have very limited food source, they don't have so many options and outside to eat. So if we have a harsh winter, they might get into your ground and start digging up those bulbs and eat them because they're tender, they're delicious. I totally get it, but um, as a human, as a grower, you don't want that to happen. So you can spray, you can spray your yard, you can spray the animal repellent, you can use chemicals, you can use peppers and all that, but chemicals, I think sometimes I just think they're a little bit harsh on animals, but also that they can be easily washed off by a rainfall or by just simply you water your yard and then just rinse it off. So the actual really good way to prevent animals to dig up your bulbs is to choose the bulbs that are naturally animal resistant. So we're talking about deer, we're talking about ground squirrels, all those critters that and can get into your bulbs. So just to give you a list of the bulbs that are really resilient to animals, and I can't remember all of them, so I'm gonna cheat here a little bit. Now your daffodils are definitely your animal resilient. So they won't be eating your daffodils, and if you planted that in the ground, I don't have any daffodils over here, but daffodils are really just like a narcissus. So they are animal resilient. And your narcissus, we talked about these kinds very much like daffodils. They are almost identical. So these guys, they're naturally deer and animal resistant. Your hyacinths, animal resistant. And your allium, we talked about allium over here because they are in the onion family. So I think the reason that animals don't like those bulbs because then they have a very pungent smell and they just don't smell great. They're like garlics. That would be naturally repelling to animals. So another trick, and you can, easily tell if this bulb is animal resilient or if it's a deer resistant is, again, the package tells you. At this bottom row, okay, you can see all very clear information over here. So this one you can see it's deer resistant. So it says right here. When you choose bulbs from your local store or your garden center, if the package has some information to offer, read it through, and that's going to tell you a lot and help you to achieve more success when you plant those bulbs. So if you don't want the animals to dig into your ground and over the winter for those delicious tender bulbs, choose the kinds that are naturally resistant. That's going to save you a lot of headaches, a lot of frustrations. Other kind of the bulbs that are animal resilient would be your fall flowering crocus. I'm talking about these guys. They're animal resilient. And your iris, actually all types of the irises, they're animal resilient. That's awesome. And your snowdrops. Snowdrops. Snowdrops are these. I actually didn't talk about this. This is a very, very special and a unique kind of the bulbs. You don't see them very often. They have a beautiful bell-shaped flower once they come up, but those ones are called snowdrops. So snowdrops are natural animal resistant. And grape hyacinth, luckily, these cute little guys are animal resistant as well. So quite a few options, right? And definitely within those, you can find the kind that you can go with. And unfortunately, that I think tulips is not on the list. So tulips will not be naturally animal resilient. But if I were you, I'm always trying to play with the system and just see how it comes out. But if I were you, I want to plant tulips, but I don't want my tulip bulbs to be dug out by the animals. I would actually plant my tulip bulbs along with all those ones that are animal resistant and plant them together. Not necessarily they need to be planted in the same hole, but in the same area, right? So when the animal get to this area, they sense the smell of those pungent like an alliums or the grape hyacinths and all those ones, they do repel animals. They might deter them from digging to the bulbs like tulips that are naturally by itself animal resistant. So don't feel like you have to compromise, you have to sacrifice for the kind that you really like those beautiful tulips. Plant them, try and experiment. Plant them with the ones that are more resistant. You might have really surprising results. That's what I would do. So we talked about this, and so next is fertilizers. Um, you don't have to. You don't have to use fertilizer. Naturally, the soil, if you have pretty good soil, that should be sufficient of providing the nutrients and providing all those vital, nutrients to the bulbs. However, if you do want to improve the performance, you do want it to give an extra boost for your bulbs and to really give them TLCs for the upcoming spring. Better color, bigger size of the flowers, just look fabulous. Definitely we recommend you to use fertilizer. When you use fertilizer, there are so many different kinds on the market, but with Fridays, I just don't know some other places. I just can't speak for other places, but I can speak for my own garden center. So at Fridays, we carry Espoma as a organic fertilizer line, and they have a kind called a bulb tone. So it's specifically designed for your bulbs, any kinds of the bulbs. So this will work really, really well. Now, for me, is a lot of people may just look at this and say, well, that's the right fertilizer. Yes, it is. But for me, because our a little bit of more OCD background, that I just like to look at the ingredients as well as the ratio of the macronutrients. So when it comes to me that I look at the fertilizers, it might not always say at the very front, but somewhere on the packaging, it should have the three numbers. Okay, we talked about those three numbers you see all the time. So right here, this one is right here. I don't know if you can see, but those three numbers over here, they mean something, and those are the macronutrients. Macro, M-A-C-R-CO, your most essential nutrients. Those three kinds. They stands for NPK. Okay, so N stands for nitrogen. Nitrogen is really good for. It's the most essential fertilizer and nutrients for your plant. It mainly contributes for growing leaves, growing stems, growing sizes, growing mass. Get it? Taller, bigger, better for the foliage. Your middle number, the second number, the middle number is your P. P stands for phosphorus. Phosphorus are really good for two things. One is stimulating root growth. So if you ever have some kind of a root stimulator at home, you would see the middle number is very high because phosphorus specifically really good for promoting roots. And which is great because we want our bulbs to establish roots as fast as possible, as vigorous as possible. Your third number is your K. K stands for potassium. And potassium, it doesn't specifically good for just one thing. It's just overall really good for the water transportation within the plant. We're talking about this plant. When you water, the roots absorbs the water, and the water carries the nutrients and carry vital vitamins and all those nutrients throughout the mass of the plant, all the petals, all the branches, all the leaves, and it transports just like our blood. Our blood is carried throughout our body, transporting all the vital nutrients to our body. So potassium is really good at that. Thus, it really helps for the plant to be more drought resilient. So when you have sufficient water movement, transportations in you or this plant, in the plant, it really helps the plant to be resilient to drought. If there is a slight drought situation, it should be just fine. So when you look at a fertilizer like this, look at those three numbers. Now I talked about for bulbs, if you can see this bulb tone, the three numbers are 3, 5, 3. Okay, so your first number, nitrogen, is 3, which is good. Your middle number, we're looking for a higher phosphorus content. So your middle number, this one is 5, which is great because it tells me that this bulb tone, this fertilizer is going to stimulate roots and it's going to promote buds and flowers. So phosphorus is good for stimulating roots and promoting buds and flowers. Now I branch off a little bit. So despite of the bulbs we're talking about, even in normal blooming plants, if you have any blooming plants, it can be a house plant, it can be a blooming bushes or a blooming tree in your yard. If you want to stimulate more buds and flower, choose a fertilizer that is high in phosphorus. Okay, choose a fertilizer that is high in phosphorus and use that to count on it to promote more buds and more flowers. So don't go heavy on the nitrogen, because if you go heavy on the nitrogen, which is your first number, you might think that you have fed your flowers, you have fed your bushes, but it just growing green leaves. You know, you don't want green leaves, you want flowers. So making sure you know each macronutrients, what they do and how you can use them, that's really is gonna put you in that sweet zone for getting the results you want. So that's when it comes to the nutrients. Okay, so overall, that we covered a whole lot about the bulbs today. You know, again, that bulbs, I think they are just a really nice and valuable perennials and to have. Not only that, when they bloom, they look beautiful, and to me, I think they're an asset to your yard. You don't have to do it every year. You don't have to spend money, efforts to replant them every year. As long as you take care of them and do the right things when you start planting them during the fall time, you're gonna have year after year after year of the beautiful fields of the flowers at the first sight of spring. So after a long winter, we're so just fed up with the snow and the coldness and just the colorless around our communities, just dying for colors, right? So you would definitely appreciate the beautiful colors of those guys put out for your yard. Beautiful shapes and colors and different accents in your yard. when you need them the most, which is early spring. And but if you have any questions, if you have other, things that I have not mentioned, please feel free to drop us a line and send us a message, and I will get the answer to you and help you to achieve the best success of planting bulbs. Right now, all those bulbs, they are 10% off with early bird discount at our garden center. So I'm not doing a kind of like a sales pitch over here, but I just want to say that when you can save money on the bulbs, take advantage of that, because they're truly beautiful and they worth the price they are. And get them right now so you can have quite a bit of the selection to go with. Later into the season, you can still get them because you just need to plant them before hard frost. So you can get them right now, ongoing, right before hard frost. But if you do want the kind of the varieties, specific colors you like this hyacinth is very beautiful, dark, deep maroon colored. If you do want to go with a specific color or the kind of the bulbs you want, make sure you get them early because they get picked over after, few weeks. You might end up with something really generic that you just not feeling 100%. So again, this is today's episode is about bulbs. I hope I have covered pretty good with the bulbs. Oh, last thing, when you buy bulbs, how to choose the bulbs. I want to make sure that I cover this. Is when you choose bulbs, give them a little squeeze. Okay, don't squeeze them too hard, but give them a little squeeze. Like squeeze them just with your finger, pinch them a little bit to feel the firmness of the bulbs. Because if a bulb is healthy, it's firm. And it's not rock hard, but it's firm. You can feel it with your fingers. But don't go with the bulbs that feels, after you kind of give it a little firm squeeze, it feels squishy, it feels soft, it feels loose. Don't go with those bulbs because that means that bulb is rotted. And again, moisture is the number one enemy to bulbs. No matter when you store them or when you choose them and buy them, if the bulb has been contaminated with extra moisture and water and they start rotting, look at them and see how clean they are. Like this tulip, this bag of the tulip bulbs, they're just beautiful. They're just ivory white and they're firm. So that's a great sign of healthy bulbs. Don't choose the ones that feels light, feels squishy, feels kind of like loose and just not firm. Don't buy them because those are not healthy bulbs, and you don't want to just go with wasting your money out there, right? So that's all I have today for the bulbs, and I hope you all have enjoyed this session. We'll have more educational videos upcoming, so if you like it, if you want to learn from us, stay tuned with our YouTube channel as well as our social media, and we'll see you next time.